Hello, folks. We have Aristo with us today, and he's going to talk about a key to liberation and more things, as usual. Aristo, I'm going to just let you go, and we'll see how the conversation flows.
Thank you, Ron. It's good to be back. I've been doing a lot of reading lately. I always do a lot of reading. I do a lot of meditating, among other things. And of course, when you go onto something like Facebook, for example, or online, or read the mainstream, or even the alternative news today, it can get very stressful. Life is stressful enough, but then you read about these things, and then if you watch the news as well, and you kind of tend to think that this must be on purpose in some way. It is not just, oh, the world is crazy, so I don't want to deal with it. It's almost like it's in your face. And this in your face, even if you don't have in your face situations in the so-called real world, or what I would call the immediate world, where you confront people in a physical way, even if you don't have that too much and your life is fairly, smooth and peaceful, so to speak, if you deal with online media in any shape or form, social media, informative media, scholarly media as well, because there's controversy now everywhere. Things are not clear-cut anywhere. So if you want to open your mind as well, if you want to even open your heart in terms of what's out there, you will be confronted with stress. And this stress is not something that's almost like a trivialized word. It's almost like, okay, you go into a room and you see a painting on the wall that's a little crooked, so you feel stress, some kind of thing like that. It's almost like a syndrome or a disorder or something like that, or it's almost like life pressuring you. And what happens when we feel stress? I mean, what is this stress? Stress is, to me, the feeling of not being free while you're trying to be free. It's the contradiction between something that compresses you on the one hand, an obligation, an imperative, a condition that overpowers you, and your own will, your own initiative, your own desire, your own aspiration. Now, we tend to also, especially metaphysically oriented people, often tend to have this thing against the personal self, which they call the ego.
That was discussed last night in the meeting too.
I'm sure, and ego just means me. And it's a Greek word, ego. It means me. And Sigmund Freud coined the term ego in terms of some kind of part of the self. And so there's a confusion there, But the thing is, and in Indian yoga, you have ahamkara, which is the I thought, the I think, the I energy, I amness, basically. But it's not your nature of consciousness. It's essentially pointing the finger at yourself and identifying yourself, the identifier, the first person pronoun. Now, this creates problematic situations when it comes in conflict with the world. So often people think in terms of one-sided. They think, okay, it's the ego that's at fault. And the ego basically, or the personal self, and we just have to adapt to the world, whatever it's doing. Of course, the world is itself full of egos, So, I mean, every particle is an ego. Everything that's distinct from everything else is an ego, whether it's conscious or not. It's an it. It's a, if it could reference itself, whether it can or not, it is still an ego. So that's a one-sided view, in my opinion. Because, on the other hand, from the perspective of the ego, the world is restrictive. It's saying, okay, no, you can't do this. You have to do that. You have to go, like even you said, freedom has its limits. You can't go beyond a certain point. Where you step on other toes, that's where you have to stop. So, again, this is not an evaluation of a moral or ethical evaluation. It's just what is. The thing is that there is manipulation in the works here. If somebody is trying to manipulate you, it is known that one thing that they can do is play on your empathy. They use your very gift of empathy, of interconnectedness against you. And they do that by making you feel guilty. And so often people, and many people, in order to escape this sense of guilt, will go to the other extreme by claiming there is no such thing as ethics, there's no such thing as goodness, there's no such thing as morality, whatever. And so round and round, and you have conflict. You have a divide and conquer sense. Again, there is something inside of us, however, of course, all of it's inside of us, but there is something here that works against us, essentially. And it is our sense of trying to fix things on the outside all the time, and imposing rules, saying, you know, one of these rules is this: you have no right to do this, you know, or you shouldn't do this. And that's well and good, because we're expressing essentially our own desire of not wanting to experience something. That's one thing. But we phrase it in terms of some kind of overarching law needing to be imposed in order to stop the situation we don't like, or to initiate the situation we do like. In other words, we are invoking tyranny. Whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, and we call it law, we are invoking tyranny, because what happens when everybody has their own sense of what needs to be done and what should and shouldn't be done? And of course, somebody who wants to manipulate you will ensure divide and conquer, will ensure that your viewpoint clashes with another viewpoint, will tweak people and push buttons to polarize egos. And then these egos, these selves, these individualities will end up saying, you should do that. No, you should do this. No, you should do the other. No, you shouldn't do. Even the ones that say, no, this should thing is crap and let's throw it out the window, they might fall into the trap and say, well, you shouldn't use that stupid should word, you know. You shouldn't do, you know, you shouldn't impose. So it goes round and round and round. And thus, this is what I mean by being imprisoned. We are imprisoned. We're not imprisoned so much. A lot of things I become to question them. Things like the Matrix, for example. You know, any kind of notion that becomes popularized that comes from Hollywood. You know, you assume, oh, Hollywood is just expressing the collective. No, it's expressing the plans of a few people who
want to rule the world.
Well, they basically are behind movie scripts. They will not let a movie script go in there that's going to awaken people. They might want to test the water sometimes and you know, borderline situations to see, okay, are people still awake enough? Have we dumbed them down enough that if we put this revolutionary idea a little bit, are they going to, you know, is there going to be a grassroots movement? And if there is, you know, snuff it out. But they will not let it continue, even if this is allowed. So there's this promotion, you know, and of course we all know conspiracy theory, anti-conspiracy theory, and this, that, and the other, you know, to make you feel guilty. If you ever try to identify that there are some people who take advantage of resources, money, and power in order to come into control and be tyrants. It's almost like saying to think that anybody wants to be a tyrant is insane. It is not insane. It's a historical fact. People have wanted to become tyrants forever. So conspiracy, that's the way you become a tyrant. You conspire. What the hell? I mean, you know. So anybody who falls for that crap, just because some idiot says it with cynicism and hoity-toity cynicism, is actually imprisoned by the manipulation. And all of us are imprisoned in one way or another. And sometimes we think the prison is really something while it's really something else. Our very reaction against the prison can actually be imposing another prison. For example, if you fight against the so-called ego, you may be trapped by your own struggle against an ego. And then you may turn into some moralizing person that tells everybody that they're full of shit because they have an ego, or that's your ego talking. You know, no, that's me talking. That's my individuality speaking, my personal pronoun. It is here, you know, which means it's not a perversion. We can't be nobodies, collectives. We have to reference ourselves, and that's okay. It's when the personal self feels wounded that they will try to overcompensate, and then the easiest way or the most immediate way, and maybe even the fear-ridden way, is to bring down somebody else. And it's really ironic because it's their ego that makes them react to that. and get angry and point a finger and call the other person egoic or egotistical. This ego, whatever, but my sense of self, And the thing is, no, you're not threatening my sense of self. You're just not letting me communicate. You're obstructing my liberation. You're obstructing my freedom, And so the thing is, but if everybody is wounded, even breathing is going to stress somebody. So stressing somebody or actually expressing stress isn't necessarily restricting other people and other things. Being yourself isn't necessarily doing that. However, the only one who can actually make decisions is you, and that is the key. The key is that you are the solution to your problems. This is a key. And a corollary to this, that you are the solutions to your problems, and you are the center of the problem itself, because you are the center of yourself. You are the center of the universe you inhabit. The universe is your experience. It's not my experience or his or her experience. Once you do that, you abdicate your position and your responsibility as a center of awareness, as a being that's incarnate on earth. So it helps us to step back from our assumptions. That's another key. Step back from assumptions. All assumptions, anything. It's okay to be insecure. I read once, actually yesterday, that researchers have discovered a center of the brain that is one specific center of the brain that when it's overdeveloped or very developed, we cannot handle uncertainty. This center of the brain, basically, this area, is how we analyze situations in order to predict outcomes. We go, okay, I'm going into this situation. Is it going to serve me? It's like a reward anticipation thing. How is this in my best interest, basically, when you ask that? And this center of the brain. So if you're somebody, it says, who can really analyze or perceive situations in terms of, is this serving me or not? It doesn't have to be egotistical, but does this serve me? You also may be a person who may feel far less comfortable with uncertainty than otherwise may be the case. So something that's a positive, something that allows you to get into situations and evaluate, is this in my best interest or not? May also be in a situation that says, well, I don't know if it's in my best interest or not. I have no clue. And there's a conflict there. That kind of conflict, however, isn't really a conflict. It's a chaotic experience. It's an experience basically of fluidity, where you yourself know where you stand in terms of, what you want to do, where you want to go, where life is leading you and stuff. However, what you don't know is where the world stands. You don't know if your actions are going to lead you to your best interest. So one way to resolve that kind of situation is to get rid of your misconceptions. To get rid of your misconceptions, one easy way to do this is to learn to discern. But we have, many people ask how, and you can't just answer it clearly. It's something you do by intending to do it and practicing it. But I was reading these watching videos, reading some stuff, because I'm into hypnosis, and I want to, and I've been into, the mental aspect of mind control. Well, it's all a mental aspect, but subliminal hypnosis, how it affects us, maybe using it to change our own views and open our minds, as well as defending ourselves from what tries to brainwash us. So I found some interesting things. I always do. But, one of the interesting things is that many of us are, everybody, and even mysticism says that, you're in a trance in the waking state. All of these zones, you watch TV, you're in a trance. You listen to a politician, they put you in a trance. You go out and you want to shop for something, all of the marketing puts you in a trance. You drive a car, you're in a trance. You're in a trance. You read a book, you're in a trance. There's a certain trance state when you read a book. We're bombarded with all of these waves, electromagnetic waves. Some of these tend to put us in a trance, in a stressful trance. A trance isn't a bad thing necessarily, but if you don't know what your trance is doing to you, you are imprisoned. So what is the solution to this? The solution is, in my honest opinion, based on containment. Some people say And we've talked about this a lot. What you resist persists. And you and I have often said, well, that's not quite true. We don't believe this. But on the other hand, what you resist persists does not pertain to physical situations. Certain people have generalized it. It's a psychological terminology. The thoughts you resist persist. The emotions you resist will persist. So it's not basically going out and somebody's trying to fight you so you don't resist them. You are, in fact, like Gandhi, but Gandhi himself resisted. It was just passive resistance instead of active resistance. It was still resistance. He didn't just say, take it, come over, I invite you and all of this. That's unresistance. He just said, I'm sitting here and everybody else is sitting here and we're not budging until you listen or you negotiate or we do something. So it's not, the fact is that resistance need not be violent, but at the same time, if you sit here and your trance is affecting you and you're resisting the perception that you're in a trance, that's denial. You see, denial is a form of resistance. So if you are resisting something, the realization, if you're resisting your own awareness, if you're resisting your own feelings, see, then these feelings will persist. In essence, you are resisting yourself, and yourself is not going to give up. You're resisting the effects of the world upon your individuality. So your ego, you're resisting your ego. Your ego is going to persist because it wants to tell you something. Don't shoot the messenger. That's the whole thing about resistance is, something is trying to tell us something and we are pushing it away because for whatever reason we are afraid. That is the type of fear that is harmful. Normally, real fear, natural fear is not harmful. It basically is a boost of energy that needs to find an outlet. If it finds an outlet, whether it's confrontation, evasion, or even the search of pleasure or some kind or relationship or harmony, or creativity, sometimes fear does that. Oh man, I'm just,
gives you an adrenaline rush.
Exactly. I'm freaked out and I want to go make love with somebody. Some people, it happens. And, dates go on movie theaters, they get scared, blah, blah, blah. Haunted houses, Halloween, young people, the thing is, and that's a fact, but it is, sensual pleasure or anything, even eating, that's not always a bad thing. The problem with fear is when you get paralyzed, when you don't have an outlet and paralysis. That's when many predators take advantage of that reflex and, that's how they get their prey. That's one of the reasons people have always feared the serpent. When you watch a serpent, look at a mouse and the mouse, which is just, you can't catch a mouse. It goes so fast. All of a sudden, oh my God, it's like it becomes a metaphor of evil. A metaphor of everything that we're truly afraid of, the predator that could actually stop us in our tracks. So we're completely hypnotized and we even fall in love with a predator. We love our tormentors. We love those who subjugate us. So we are imprisoned by them. And even when they point fingers and say, no, that's the face of the evil. That's the face of your tormentor. Authority. Even when we hate authorities, sometimes it's a kind of love-hate relationship because we're always quoting authorities. We're always looking to authorities to say things, and when we do question, often it is when things go too far for us, like many people in the cultism, for example, are just hate Christianity. It's just anti-Christian. They're not like, oh, well, you're not into paganism. Really, you're not into whatever that means. You really just don't hate Christianity. You're worshiping this devil because you just hate the God stuff. Or you're into God because you're afraid of evil. It goes both ways. So again, you're escaping and escaping, you're trapped, man. That's your prison. How do we deal with this? Well, we say this following thing, and no matter what choices we make, we go, what are my degrees of freedom now? What are my trance states? My trance states are where my choices do not serve me. But if I really look into this, I'm going to stimulate an area of the brain that also might make me fear uncertainty. You see, this is something that I've not seen elsewhere. correlation. But when I read this one, I said, okay. And they were also, well, they're trying to almost saying that, well, it's an area of the brain that makes you afraid of the world. And so maybe if we could find a drug to stifle that area of the brain, or some kind of genetic vaccine to get the gene that causes that area of the brain to develop. So, it's almost like another trap. A big pharma tries to sell stuff against our best interests, or some new science that tries to dumb us down without us knowing, or some, we have to get that chemical in so people aren't afraid. Anyways, it almost seemed like that was, I was reading into it that way, which I couldn't help myself. But what I did see, though, is that, look, if you're actually going to discern, you have to be ready for your sense of uncertainty to increase, because the world is an unpredictable place from the perspective of the individual. It may not be an unpredictable place in its own sense. I mean, maybe you can see things, maybe you can increase the range of understanding and discernment, but for the most part, for many of us, it is almost a chaotic place where it seems that things don't have rhyme or reason. And maybe they don't in terms of how we understand rhyme or reason. But there is always cause to the effect. It just doesn't happen. There is no such thing as out of the blue. Why? Because there's structure. So there's always motivation in the human world, at least. So you say, okay, but I'm not free at all. Well, that's not good enough to say that, because it's an either-or situation. You're not absolutely free and absolutely in prison. You have to really look at yourself, look at the situation, your situation, and understand your degrees of freedom. In any way you can, get a feel, if you can't map them out in any objective sense, of your degrees of freedom. Where am I most free? Well, I'm most free in terms of, for example, how I feel about myself. Nobody's trying to force me to feel about myself. They are trying to convince me that they can force me to feel about myself a certain way. They are giving me guilt trips, but these guilt trips are not really forcing anything. They are strong suggestions and influences. It's been proven that nobody can hypnotize you to do anything against your will. They can torture you to do something against your will because you're trying to do something that hurts you to avoid an even greater pain. That's different. They can deceive you to do something against your will, but then you're thinking you're doing the right thing anyways. They can program you in terms of conditioned responses, but then you are asleep and in a trance state. So you are being programmed because you are asleep. And people say, wake up, wake up, wake up. Waking up is not about reading somebody's information. Waking up is about how you address yourself. So the one thing I want to say in this video that I was thinking about before we even came on is what you cannot contain will contain you. You know, I know that's not the title, but it may as well be. What you cannot contain can and probably will contain you. Sometimes that is a good thing. If I cannot contain, a mystic seeks the divine on the inside. And so they seek to contain the divine because they believe there is an infinite space in this human individuality that some people call ego or mistake for a program. And there are programs, that's a whole other story. The program is not an entity. It is a set of patterns imposed upon you. But some people mistake that for the self, the individuality, which in itself is infinite potential. Your ego, this thing, and I know this, oh no, but I thought it this way and I thought it this way. Well, I'm just suggesting different conceptions of things because that is what we can change. We may not be able to change the world immediately, but we can make choices about how we view ourselves, how we feel about things. We can understand ourselves. We can make choices about how we address the world. This one hypnotist, and I really looked up the name. I forgot it again. Anyways, he mentioned something called the chaos wave. The world is like a wave, a tremendous, often threatening wave. But the best way to confront it is as a surfer. You cannot change the wave. You cannot stop the wave. You cannot even redirect the wave, but you can ride the wave to the shore in the way that you desire. You can do it artfully. You can make choices. The wave isn't the bad thing. What is a bad thing is being crushed by it. So, we are also structured, I'd like to add to that, saying that, look, we are structured to ride these waves. It is in our nature to ride the chaos of the world. And we don't just ride it passively. Eventually, our choices can guide where we go on it. Maybe you can't change how the world is, but the thing is, don't interpret the world in terms that are absolute. Don't say, for example, and this is in our best interest, in my opinion, don't say these elites control everything. Well, no, actually, they don't control everything. You don't know what they control and what they don't control because they're all about deception. Because if somebody was a psychopath and they controlled everything, we'd be fucked. That's all there is to it. They can't. There would be no process of subjugation if they controlled everything, But what don't they control? They do have surveillance because they don't control everything as well. I mean, nobody's going to spy on you if they control you completely. There's no point. So, that's what I've been emphasizing in these videos, time and again, is that look at the world and look where you are free and where you are not. It makes a difference because even if you can do one choice to trigger yourself a little bit in a positive way, to experience a sense of freedom, then you are liberating yourself. And liberating yourself is taking a step. It's a step. It doesn't matter about the destination. What matters is that we feel crippled. We can't walk. We need to get up and we need to start moving our legs. We need to exercise our legs, the legs that take us from slavery to freedom. And however humble that is. Once you can do that, then you can think about the journey and where you want to go and how you want to change things. The world is not something that's going to stay as is in an inevitable manner because what it is, we don't know. We don't know who's in charge. We don't know if there is a God or there isn't a God or whatever, and it really doesn't matter. Because if there isn't, then the same thing as if there is. Nothing changes, If there isn't, it's a mystery, and we don't, and there's a purpose behind it, then whatever. Let's navigate and go through that. If there isn't, then for whatever reason, we are here questioning. And that's a big deal. I mean, for me, it would be a bigger miracle if there isn't a God than if there is a God. If there is a God, then it's natural. Things are as they are. And you go, but they're not good enough. What's going on? Well, there's several scenarios there. But if there isn't a God and we're here, it's like, wow, man, I'm actually here out of seemingly nothing, But it doesn't matter because the point is, if everything is random, all it takes is one instance of a singularity event from which a domino chain occurs. Once the event happens, like, something, poof, upon this event, everything else builds. From then on, there is no randomness. But again, that's neither here nor there. What matters is that if you can contain your feelings in a stable manner, if you can contain your thoughts in a stable manner, if you can stand as a pillar of your own existence within the world, you can move to ride the wave of chaos or events or however you see the world, because people are fucking with us. We know that, okay? At least those, so they're messing with us really bad. They're trying to mess with our heads, with our hearts and everything. If that is a fact, oh yeah, what is, let me, I thought you were giving me a time thing.
It's 29 minutes about so far.
Okay, yeah. I saw one finger and I said, what does that mean, So anyways. See, I'm on a roll here, and of course I could stay on a roll for a long time. Ron told me he was in a meeting yesterday, and he got up, and the meeting was supposed to end at a certain time, but it went over, so he had to leave, and he felt bad about that. And I'm saying, look, man, it's, you're free to do so. However, another person might say, no, Ron, it's your right to do so. Or the other person has no right to stop you from doing so. It's like, why do we impose, and I told Ron, I think I said this earlier in the video, we tend to post things in terms of invoking tyranny. Rights, no rights, constitutions, agreements, contracts. We're worried about people trying to manipulate us when our very core behavior is all about imposing contracts, telling people what they should or should not do, what should or should not be, when in reality we cannot make choices about these things because we are ourselves restricted by them. So the thing is like if you actually reverse it, and again, people misunderstand. If I give an example about a pedophile, they'll say, oh, you're telling a pedophile should, you know, if you tell them they shouldn't do that, then that means they're going to go do it. It's like, no, we're completely hobbled. We can't walk. We can't run. We need to learn to stand up. That has been my message all along. And to learn to stand up, you have to be within. Can you, oh no, forget it. That's okay. The telephone's ringing here.
I hear it.
You hear it. Okay, well, we'll just let it ring. But I'm going to end it here because the time is up, and that thing is telling me the time is up. Very, very distracting, by the way. But again, everything that happens in our life is a choice. And I can contain this irritation right now, and it's going to go away. And I can take breaths, and I can learn not to let it get to me without denying how I feel about it. And I can look at myself and say, okay, you know, everything in the world may not be meaningful in an objective sense. It may not be a synchronicity or there's divine purpose behind it, but what I can do is use it because I'm engaging physically with it or emotionally with it as a way to awaken from my trance, as a way to meet the world, as a way to change my perspective by affirming things about it or asking a question. Like a question today, there's this, and one last thing, basically. It's in vogue now because the law of attraction, whether it works or not, affirmations don't work well. A lot of people say that. I am strong. So instead, they have this thing now called affirmations, which essentially says, instead of saying, you know, affirming something, you ask a question of, why is it that I am strong? See, so you don't question, so you're not doubting yourself now. It's a given that you're strong. So by asking that question, you don't even have to answer it. You're basically doing a roundabout affirmation, a kind of mind trick. Well, that's what they say. But in any case, you can use tricks like that in order to confront your own programming. You don't have to say, I'm deprogramming myself and whatever. Sometimes that's too stressful. Confront. Look inside and contain. When you contain something, you can let it go if you choose to. But if you don't contain it, you can't process it, you can't understand it, you can't encompass it, and so it contains you. It's going to wrap you in its own prison, in its own embrace. And that may not be a bad thing, but first, make the choice. That's what I wanted to say today. Thank you once again for hearing me out. And that's it.
Thank you, Aristo. And as I always say, people don't always understand, but namaste.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.